Hey everyone, this is Lucid, and I am joined by Demonsthenes.
Hey, folks.
And we're going to show you something pretty cool. Something that you may have heard of, maybe jested about, but probably not seen in practice. And that is Cold Raga. And Cold Raga, so Raga is a nation in late age. And Cold Raga is a thing that a lot of veteran players will tell you just doesn't exist. It's not a thing. And the reason that people say it's not a thing is because Heat Raga. So, for those of you who don't know, Raga is a kind of interesting nation. It plays very differently depending on whether you pick heat scales or cold scales, and you can theoretically play either or both. The reason people don't normally ever play Cold Raga is this guy right here. And this is one of the better sacreds in the game. It's super expensive in terms of gold and resources, but it is an absolute monster with 4 attacks. The one of them is a lance, which will go away. Oh, wait. Yeah, which will go away. It has a second form too. So once you kill the rider, the griffin will fight on. And yeah, if you get the griffin back to Raga's cap, you get a new rider for it. So anyway, it's a really strong unit, but you can only get it in heat scale. So basically, because of that and maybe some other reasons, people really never play Cold Raga. But I was telling Demonsthenes we should do some, like I wanted to, he's a pretty good player. And I was thinking, God, I'd like to do something with him because you're also kind of new to the game. When did you start playing Dominions?
Yeah, for Dominions overall, I think I played some Dominions 3 and Dominions 4, but I only started playing like multiplayer last summer, so like 15 months ago, something like that.
Right. And yeah, I could just tell by like lots of things you were saying, and some of you've won a few games. We did that intervention video where you were playing Hellenica Pangea,
Huh?
and you won that one. That was a big game. That was like what 20 something, 30 people.
That was 30 players. I actually have not lost a multiplayer Dominions game. I've only played like 6 or 7. I'm not counting things like Champions Arena and that. But
Right.
I'm hoping to fix that because I've qualified for this year's tournament, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not winning that one.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Oh wait, you won. You already won one of the games.
yeah, I won a yeah Archery.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that. Well, congratulations. So yeah, so I just wanted to, and you and I have talked a fair bit, so I thought it'd be fun to do something together. And what better to possibly put on the channel than Cold Raga? So tell me and tell the viewers here, what's your thought process behind Cold Raga? Why did you think it was a good thing?
Yeah, so I think one of the key things for any nation is the quality of the mages, and Cold Raga has two sort of core mages. There's the Aftervan, who's sort of mostly a researcher, but the Zautar is it's got 4 randoms, but effectively 3/4 will be fire 2, air 2, or water 2,
Right,
and all of those paths are super useful.
right,
And then you've got the Arya Seraph, which are recruit anywhere air 3.
right. And that's really
They
rare
they
for
have
late age. Like late age in general is like very low magic path, right? So I don't think there's any other nation with an Air 3 mage recruit anywhere in late age.
I think MA Calum might be the only nation that
Right,
has it other than when called Raga.
right,
And they do have some magic dual vulnerability, like a third are Astral 2, but the rest are Astral 1, so that is an issue. But they only cost 220 gold. So, if you've got the infrastructure to not be sort of commander point limited on making them, you can really do a lot. And there's a lot of things which lose to, the amount of air elementals or thunder strikes or whatever that you can put out with that.
right.
So, it's a really special capability. But even
Yeah,
if you're just using the Zautar, they can do a lot. And, one of the things that is attractive about them is that they can do a lot even really early game. So if you just get Evocation 2 and Conjuration 3, you can do Phoenix Power, potentially with a gem, with every single one of them. And,
yeah,
and then with Evocation 2, you can spam Sulfur Haze. And
right,
Sulfur Haze is this cloud spell that does fire poison damage. So either fire or poison resistance will basically make it worthless. But it'll basically wipe, 4 squares of guys who stand around in it for a while
right.
if they don't have those. And all of
But
their
resistances are not very common. Like, late age is the scales age more than other
exactly,
eras, right? So you're much more likely to just run into troops without any resistances.
exactly. And so, right. And so there's a synergy between that. And if you look at the sort of troop lineup, there's some bird troops that are really good for mobility and archery, but the sort of main troops are these Turin sort of kind of like Abyssinian human bred infantry. So all of them have 10, or actually the best ones with the Vanguard have 15 fire resistance.
Right.
So they're completely immune to that. they've got 20 protect. So
Yeah.
you can make like a line of Sabaran Guard, put, if you manage to get some nature mages, put protection on them, so they get up to 25 protection. They'll still have 10 fire resistance. They'll be immune to sulfur phase. They'll be really hard to kill. You can actually have them stay put by putting them on a hold and fire order because they have this composite bow, which I guess I've learned a lot about the tricks you can do with heavy cavalry with that feature from playing Late Age Tianqi.
Yeah, it's kind of a
So it
blessing
just
and a
feels like it's
curse,
really strong.
right? Like you can
Exactly.
do a lot of really cool stuff with it, like get these guys buffed to hell and all sorts of things. But it can also be the most annoying thing when you want them to like run into charge, and after they've killed their first target, they sit there shooting the next one with the bow. Like, God damn it!
Yeah, you put them on hold an attack post or even hold an attack rear. There's a good chance that they run in the first squad that they hit, whatever squad they originally targeted dies, and then they just stand there shooting arrows for the rest of the battle.
Right,
Like,
right.
what are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's annoying. But that's
So,
an argument for a play style, which a lot of times you don't want to do, but a play style where you get these guys buffed to hell and you exhaust all their ammo before they run into combat. So
Exactly. That goes really well. If Nathan can do, both fire and cold, fatigue plays really easily, And so, sort of the idea is, you make
right,
a
because you've got
line
cold
of
resistance
fire
too
guard.
on a lot of your things. So
And all of your mages basically have either fire or cold magic, so they can cast the self buff spells to
Right.
give them either fire or cold resistance, depending on what they don't already have. They also I think all the fire mages have 15 fire resistance, all the cold ones have 15
right,
cold resistance. So they're pretty good on that front, even without spending combat turns to get it. And
so
the
to
final,
summarize a little bit, so instead of like a lot of people would be worried, okay, like maybe you like these mages better for cold Raga, but you're giving up a lot of early game power going for Zayedans. And what you're saying is like, okay, yeah, you're giving up that, but you're instead getting these guys who can all drop sulfur haze, and you have the scales troops to withstand it. And you're just basically banking on like between lesser elementals, which you can do almost all of except Earth. Between elementals, decent scales troops, and sulfur haze spam, like you can win your first war. And elephants, which are the best elephants in the game, tied with LA Arco. These are the same. Yeah.
those elephants are amazing. If you click on them, there's sort of two key features that make them, they're actually extremely good for expansion, and we'll be expanding with them as our main expanders this game. The one is the 18 protection, which makes them really
Right.
unlikely to get killed. Like indie heavy infantry need to roll pretty well to even do damage to them. The second is that they've got 2 length 4 repel weapons.
Right.
And what that means is that the first N attacks against them are basically gonna get blocked by repel.
Right. And that's especially good for
And-
like heavy cav and stuff.
Especially good for heavy cab, but even barbarians, there's a lot of stuff that, but in any case, whatever you hit when you first make contact, those things will usually be dying very quickly if they're being trampled, and they won't even really get to, their attacks back won't even really hit, and then they've got to go through 18 protection and 60 hit points to actually kill one of these. So
Right.
they're sort of unstoppable for squishing, PD or any sort of non-elite troops.
Yeah.
The other thing that's key about them is they actually get experience stars. So, those, once they get 1 or 2 experience stars, those repel checks get really strong.
Right.
Because they have to win 2 repel rolls in order to even get to attack.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
that's a very rare feature.
Yeah, it's one of the things, a lot of people know that repel, you want to have a good attack score, you want to have a long weapon. Thing that people kind of forget about because it's not normally relevant is that how many weapons you have that are long matters a lot too. It basically is just double the effectiveness of repel because of these 4. But
So,
you still
what-
will get harassed down and stuff, and repel will go away once you get surrounded, but still nice for the alpha strike.
Yeah, if you've got a critical mass of these, and we'll see, we can check sort of some of the later expansion battles. It'll be like a total of 12 damage was done to elephants before the enemy ran. So, it can be really intense. So yeah, you can expand with elephants. And actually, elephant expansion is actually faster than the Zayed expansion because of the resource considerations.
Right.
So, elephants cost 60 resources, which is about the same as the Zayedans. But a party of 2 elephants with some garbage, can take just about any province. 2 Zayedans, it's actually kind of hard because either you're bringing 1 Zayadan commander, so that at least your commander doesn't get sniped. You've got the problem
Right.
with maybe some of the militia run past.
You have to
them,
bless them
so your
and all
commander-
that. Yeah.
You need to bless them. Like it's actually really hard for the first 3 or 4 turns to really get your Zayadan parties going. Once they're going, they're fantastic.
Right.
But, we'll see. We'll be pumping 1 expansion party a turn pretty darn early.
Yeah, I feel like, I've subbed in a game as Raga, but I've never played them myself, like done pretender design and stuff. And but I subbed in early. It was like turn 14 or 15 or something. And my impression was like it's a very slow inertia nation when you're playing around Zayedans. Like these guys eat so much gold a turn when you're maxing out cap recruitment of Zayedans, and your infrastructure is extra expensive with like the high temple cost. And it just felt like, oh my god, it takes so long to like build a big army and all of this. But I am suspicious that like some of the best players in the game would be able to do very, very efficient Zayedan expansion. Like, I don't know exactly how do you take one of these guys, put somebody on guard commander? Do you do you do just a super light bless with just like larger Zayedans and nothing else, but then not ever worry about blessing them? And, maybe like larger magic weapons with like a really budget monolith. I could see, but I don't even know. Like, I have no idea. But I think what's interesting is you're just like, this is like really like doing this efficiently and having really fast early expansions a little tricky because you have to like manage not having your priests get killed. It's slower to get out the gate because elephants will kill more than Zayedans. And then this is just like actually easy for expansion. You just like make a few elephants, put some people in the squad with it so they don't, suffer the penalty from only having 2 dudes and go to town.
My claim is that I think if you want to, if you have a bless, you might still want to do roughly what we do for the first 2 or 3 turns to make a couple elephant parties and then switch over to Zaydens once you've got the resources to pump 4 or 5 a turn. And I think that sort of might be better than trying to start out with trying to do 1 to 2 Zayden parties because maybe, I don't know, because you also need a lot of gold in order to pump 4 of them. Like they're real expensive.
Well, I mean, I think the question is how much better is 1 elephant than 1 Zayed, and I don't know the answer to that. It would, of course, depend on the bless, but I think like what I would compare it to is like a larger Zayed without any bless. And like, I would expect 3 larger Zayedans would be able to wipe like moderate normal indies, but I'm not sure.
But that's 400. That's 450 gold, and
yeah, you do save money on these guys. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be expanding with groups of 3 elephants. You actually can do it with 2, but there's, it's more reliable, and, I wanted to win any bumps. Right. What I ended up doing. The final thing I want to just point to is the archers. So they get the normal Kalem Arya archers, which is like the second to leftmost unit.
Yeah.
And these guys are actually pretty special just because they have these composite bows that have 13 precision, so they actually hit a decent amount, and we'll get to show that off in a few turns. And they also have 10 morale. So in comparison to a lot of archers, which have 8 morale, they're actually able to take a little bit of attrition and keep fighting. And so sort of the idea is it's sort of very synergistic, I guess, with having a front line of the heavy cavalry that you can potentially have hold in place. Because you can have a swarm of these guys. They're extremely mobile. You can bring 150 that the enemy didn't even know were in range. Effectively just move 20 flaming arrows and really give things a hard time. They also siege really well. So it sort of helps with one of the other problems that you have with a sacred heavy nation in the late age. You sort of need a bunch of siege chaff in order to be able to crack it.
Yeah, and I hadn't really looked at this nation super hard until you and I were talking about it. When you mentioned these guys and I got looking at them, I think they're amazing. Like, the thing with archery is like, it gets hard countered by various things, but like archers backed up with mages, that are spamming like sulfur haze or big air elementals or thunderstrike. And they're going to like, you have no idea where 200 archers are going to pop up. Like, you can make people make some really fucking hard choices. Like, my fort got 1 turn popped and there's 300 archers on top of it with like a bunch of other screening chaff or whatever in the front. And like, do I try to defend it or do I not? I have like 40 units and 5 mages inside this fort and another like 30 I could try to bring onto it. I mean, like 300 archers with flaming arrows on them, which this nation can do reasonably trivially, is frightening.
That power could just do it. And they've got the same map movement, so you can literally attack, from 3 provinces away, with that type of force.
Right. And it's like, what are you going to do? When somebody does that to you, it's like the strategic mobility is such a huge thing. Cause I think like, because archery can be countered, you can kind of like make a big doom stack that's going to be maybe immune to archers because you have arrow fend on it or something, right? And like go march it out and feel like, okay, if somebody bounces this into you. But like, so maybe you can protect your armies from archers, but like Kalem's going to be, or not Kalem, Raga is going to be like one turn popping your forts. And you don't get to necessarily like have all of your things perfectly lined up with how you want them with all the archer counters. It's like, holy shit, we have to fight with what we have. And if you don't have exactly what you need to fight archers, like 300 or 400 of them is oppressive.
Suppressive. And the other thing is that you can then surprise bring, we just added 8 Arya Seraphs, who are all going to do air elementals or a thunderstrike communion, or you
Right,
can even do
right,
shimmering fields communions with them.
right.
And a lot of the things that like
You don't see
basically
it
if they
played
don't
much,
have
yeah.
their 12 mages to sacrifice on Magic Duel to really mess with that, because you can also bring some Magic Duel chaff of your own. It's going to be potentially the thing that you brought that was going to counter those archers is going to get wiped.
Yeah. So there's
So
there's a
anyway,
bunch of other things, because you and I talked kind of as you were doing pretender design for this about different little strats. I mean, there's a ton of things like flying ethereal elephants, getting these ice clad buff to hell, or was there another troop too? Oh yeah, these guys. Like these guys are pretty
yeah,
intense. Like ice protection 1, getting legions of steel on them and stuff. Was there somebody else?
yeah,
I mean, these guys are the ones that get really crazy with buffs on them, but
yeah. I mean, I think frankly, just the Savaran Guard,
yeah,
you can. Like, one of the things that you can do, it's hard to get a lot of nature access on this nation, but if you just have like some nature 1 indies that you find, you could bring 5 of them to a battle and they can just cast protection 5 times, and they can get,
right.
one of them gets you 400 gold worth of heavy cav with 25 protection, just from standing there casting.
Yeah. And, and the reason that you're mentioning for these guys in particular is they have 15 fire resistance, so they don't really mind losing 5. Yeah. And then, the mage,
Right.
and then of course, like later in the game, we get and a bunch of other stuff. So, and you get the extra fire gems from temples. So there's a lot that Raga has going for it going into the late game. But a lot of it will take finesse, because like you're going to have cold scales, but you have to try to get a blood economy going without like.
I know I'm definitely going to be looking to at my neighbors and really excited whenever there's one who's hot, because either
Right.
we can be friends and I can just let their Dominion flood in and get my fire mages that way, or I can eat them and ideally leave like 1 province left so their Dominion stays on their capital for forever, and be able to make the ones who require a temple there.
Yeah. The one
So
thing
yeah,
that I
no,
think bears mentioning, and this was something you and I talked about a fair bit before the game started, was like in my opinion, the real risk of going cold Raga. Because like after we really took like an objective look at all the troops, it looked like, okay, this is like a solid plan. But the one risk was like, God, being cold in late age is freaking risky. Because you have Vedheim, which is just oppressive. You have Lum, which has cold resistant troops, which can be really rough. You have Atlantis, which is the same thing. Like there's all these like, and they're not like, oh, these are just like some nations which are good and cold. These are like the best nations in the era, which are like really strong and cold. Like Vedheim, S tier, Atlantis, S tier, Kalem, like A or S tier. Like these are the best like nations in this era, and they just thrive on killing people that have cold scales.
yeah. We in this game we'll have Atlantis and Lemuria who really like cold scales, and obviously I guess there's Bogarus, and various other cold nations, but
Right.
those are the 2 that really synergize with it.
So that'll be an
And
interesting
yeah,
thing
well,
to think through. But certainly I want to
okay.
say this in the opening, so that people watching this, like before they're like, oh, let's play cold Raga, like they think this through. And we'll see how it goes over the course of this game.
Yeah. The Saban Guard have 15 hit points, so the Murdering Winter isn't as terrible as it would be for other troops, and at least all of your mages have built-in 15 cold resistance or immune. But yeah, it'll be we'll find out how it goes. I have done no testing against those nations. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you can't really test things in the abstract, like, oh, I'm going to pick this nation. How will it do against everybody in the game when you don't know what their build is or anything? You can't really do that. But, you can stress about it. So, okay. So I think we've done, just the briefest of kind of national skims and overviews and talked about some of the power. We're probably going to end this episode here, but first let's.
do you wanna just briefly talk about the Pretender
Oh yeah,
Did I
yeah.
check
Let's do
before?
that. Do we have it? Is it available, or is it? We
Just
can
go
go
on
make it.
the I don't think we need to. Yeah, sure, yeah, we can make it. It should be pretty fast. So,
All right, tell me what
so
to
you
do.
want for the chassis, there's the Seraph Dominion 1 guy. So it's the
This
second one.
guy,
So and one thing to note about this is it's a super cheap rainbow. It only costs 70 design points.
right?
So that's pretty good. And we're going to do Air 4, Astral 4, and Nature 4. 4.
Okay, and then I know you got some other rainbow paths. I'm quite sure.
Earth 4.
Oh, Earth 4. All three of these have, or all
Um,
four of these have 4?
all those at 4, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that they can all get blesses. So, and then for bless, I did 3 precision, and 5 talk resistance. So part of the idea here is to have very high accuracy evocations available.
Right.
And 2 reinvigoration. So again, this is a
A
subtle
mage bless, yeah.
And Farcaster. So I had a lot of fun in my Arca Poly game with
Yeah.
putting Shrouds on Mystic to do
Right.
it, and some really nice stuff that you can do with sort of the path diversity on these mages with it. And then I think it was Resilient, Low Light Vision, and Major Poison Resistance.
Yeah, and like the Farcaster's not going to be that good for like things like Thunderstrike, which are already really long range. But for a lot of the other stuff like Sulfur Haze or Frozen Heart or Incinerate, it can be really good.
Yeah, exactly. One of the big things that'll let you do is when somebody is doing one of these like Turbo Communion things with their Scrotty or whatever, you can get your Incinerate casters to actually shoot.
What was the final thing for
giant
nature?
attack. Low light vision.
Okay.
So,
So
if
there
we're
you go.
fighting in darkness, which is a reasonable possibility. I
It-
think it was like Dominion 4.
okay.
Fully imprisoned Dominion 4. And I think the skills were Order 2, Prod 3, Cold 3, Growth 3, Luck 3, Magic 1. I think it's gonna.
Okay. Yeah, and I
Again,
actually
ended up
really
with-
like a luck pick in late age because I feel like it's so gem poor that the gems you do get from luck are more impactful.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thinking is, one of the things that Raga doesn't have is there's no Earth access, there's no nature access, there's no astral access above 2. And in particular, nature and earth are going to be hard to sight search early. So having a bank of those when this pretender comes out will be really good. I want to be able to make a Staff of Elemental Mastery because that's sort of the gateway to be able to do Eternal Pyre as the station.
Right.
And so that's why I'm going to planning to do an Air Earth, and it'll be very nice to just, you'll probably have 25 gems by turn 36 from just, luck events and or, taking land somebody else sight search. I think we discussed that I actually have regrets about this build. I would have rather done Unaging now that I've realized that the Zautar all come out old. But Low Light Vision, the idea is that if you have that, even in darkness, they'll still have pretty good precision.
Yeah.
And that'll let one really make the evocations count.
Yeah, I think people too, I think people overly stress about resistances. It's like, oh god, we have to have poison resistance. It's like if you're playing like a flyer archer nation, like those are things that tend to have very quick battles. Like you're not going to have like a 20 turn battle most of the time, right? So especially not in the early game, right? Like maybe once people have like Army of Gold and Will of Fates, like sure it'll go 20 turns, but most of the time, like these battles are over pretty quick before stuff like Val Vapors is going to have too much to say.
Yeah, the trade-off is that, having, all of your mages have 10 poison resistance means that if I do get wiped by Foul Vapors, I don't lose the mages. And that's, potentially quite meaningful. So.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
we'll see how it goes, I'd also say that if you know,
I mean, there are some, like Vetiheim can do some pretty nasty Foul Vapors traps, but like it's not going to work against Kalem. Like, especially like you summon a couple big air elementals, you have your guys either shooting at them or flying and, like jumping on them. They're not going to have time to buff up. Like Vetiheim actually really does not want to fight flyers early.
Yeah.
Though they might in Cold 3 with Rinvetti. Rinvetti are freaking scary in Cold 3, but...
But their skill strips are not going to like the Sulfur Haze stuff because, it's a little bit hard to get the, they need to bring, gear or other valuable stuff in order to get off the cold resistance area spells. So,
wait, who's not going to, Rimvetti wouldn't mind Sulfur Haze because usually you're going to have poison and fire resistance on Rimvetti. So,
no, the Rimvetti are a problem.
Yeah.
I think that, the other thing that I'll maybe add with this nation is that, the heavy cavalry are slow, and in fact, with cold skills, they're actually map move 1 because you're 14.
Oh, right.
Not really be able to do that. They do have mountain survival, so which can help a little bit. So anyway, they're going to be fast, sort of in enemy territory, but
Hmm,
not in friendly.
that's funny.
But everything else that one will be using is pretty mobile, and so
But the
potentially
elephants
the
are even
plan
a
is
little
you've got
bit
to
more mobile. This would be map move too, I'm pretty sure, and friendly.
yeah. Yeah. But if you're fighting a nasty enemy sacred stack, like one option with this build is you just go around them. You go
Right.
fight
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to. I mean, that's the
Sort of
nice
one I
thing with
wanted to
birds
try.
is you get to pick where most all the fights are going to happen. So,
The final thing I'll say is that I did test some other builds with the plan being to cast Breath of the Desert on my capital in order to get
oh,
the
right.
zayed. And unfortunately, it kills 5% of the population every time. And unless you've got some sort of heretic thing, you're going to need to cast it every 3 turns in order to keep your capital hot. And
Yeah.
it's probably just too much pop kill. So anyway, I thought about doing a light troop bless that would benefit from that, but I sort of discarded the idea because of the just felt too hard. But in case anybody's curious, you can get Breath of the Desert cast on your capital by turn like 16 or so
Yeah.
with a cold Raga if you want the cold mages everywhere, but also want zayed.
Yeah. As I do look at this, I do think I'm not sure what. I know you wanted to do Staff of Elemental Mastery. I think I would be inclined personally. I kind of like your idea for unaging, but like before when you added his poison resistance, I really like the idea of being able to go up to like Magic 3 or something, like freeing up like something like this, maybe just just to speed up all the timings. But I think this is cool how you have
I
it too. But I'm
That's
always
very
just
reasonable.
like trying to eke out like a few more scale. I love scales. So I'm always like, do we really need this? But I mean, unaging, especially like it's easy to look at these guys and be like, okay, this is the mage you should always definitely get.
Those guys are not sacred.
Right. They're
Those
not
guys will,
sacred.
yeah,
Right. It's easy to look at these guys and be like, I should all get them. But if you've got a Farcaster Bless, like these guys are going to be 2 in one of these paths, or you'll have the occasional one which will have Astral. Right. All of those are very useful. Right. And they can certainly benefit from the precision Farcaster bullshit. So pretty cool.
and if you've got 2 reinvigoration and unaging, the sort of
Right.
they'll be able to cast for quite frequently,
Right.
and potentially still do something even if you're dealing with rigor mortis or whatnot. So
All right. So I think that'll do it for
anyway,
our
yeah,
first episode. So next episode, we'll do expansion and we're going to like speed go through expansion. We're not going to probably talk about every turn. And I think the format for this in general is probably every week or something, we'll try to meet up and just cover some of the turns that have happened. But it's not going to be as like in depth where I'm like hemming and hawing over my own turns for the series. It's just going to be like a check in, talk about cool stuff that happened, think through some strategies, like what we could do. And yeah. So with that, I think we'll see you next time and tune in for expansion.
everyone.